for everyone we're talking about right now, it's lost developmental time, missed information for Jed and Carter and the rest of the front office to make decisions in the offseason. Welcome into Northside Territory, Foul Territory Network's Cubs podcast. I'm Sahadev Sharma with Patrick Mooney. We're your Cubs beat writers at The Athletic, and we are talking about the Cubs and their two-game losing streak. Is that right? Yeah, two-game losing streak after two tough losses to Cleveland. Patrick, my initial feeling is like, the best team in baseball, you lose two highly competitive games. Most of the times you just shrug that off, but I think Craig Counsell has said it for the past 3 weeks or so. Like, there's no margin for error, so it stings more. You have to win on Wednesday. You have to take care of business against bad teams. I just can't get too up in arms about these losses, but also it's the point of the season where you have to win games, and little things didn't go their way, you could say, whether it's their some defense that didn't go their way. This guy Noel Big Christmas, JD was calling him.
Great nickname.
Yeah, he's killed them, but this was 2 games against a really good team. I think the Cubs show me what they are. They're a perfectly solid team. They kind of just have done this most of the season, so I just I don't know what more to say about it.
We just have our great producing team behind the scenes just drop in like quotes we used months ago of, because if you watched any Cubs game this season, you've seen these 2 games in Cleveland of like just things not totally clicking. And it's funny. The Big Christmas, we were joking about that. I was like, I can't wait to see this guy in the Hall of Fame. I mean, probably the greatest hitter we've ever seen. And then just to me, it's just kind of funny being back in Cleveland. You were obviously there in the 2016 World Series, and it brings back a lot of memories. If you were here, your kind of mind would be going there as well. And it's just weird to see, kind of a half-empty stadium, and this team sort of creeping towards the edge of the wild card race. Just a totally different vibe. And you mentioned the no margin for error. I actually said that to Counsell the other day of like, I know you've been saying this for like months now, but when you lose a game, like a Shota game where there's some, sloppiness defense, but you get a lot of offense, and, it's weird walking in that clubhouse because there's not a lot of like anger. And this is not like a criticism, and like Major League Baseball players like process things in their own ways, but it is kind of, I don't know, staggering is the right word, but just like how even keel Counsell is all the time, of just like running through this play, that play, need this, need that, like just, you really wouldn't have any sort of idea of where the Cubs are at in the season if you just kind of dropped into any of these post-game press conferences. And he did flash some edge when I brought up 2018, when I think the Brewers were like 6 games back right around Labor Day weekend. And he said, in 2019 too. And like, that's all he said. And then I went on to Baseball Reference, like, oh yeah. And to us, I feel we remember that more as just like a Cubs implosion of just so many bad things going wrong. Whereas 2018, like the Brewers just played out of their minds in September.
That wasn't a Cubs collapse. The Brewers were great.
And so it did make me think of like, okay, they can avoid the sweep, get home, get right. Like they have their kind of path moving forward. They're going to need a lot of help. They're going to have to play at an insane clip. But
these teams all stink, Patrick.
Yeah.
I mean, not the non-playoff ones, the ones that are out right now. Yeah. They're not good teams. Like, I don't think any of them are, I shouldn't say they stink. They're all the same. Like the Cubs, I think the Cardinals are, like, go look at the Cardinals rest of their season. It's really tough. They're not going to be above 500 in my opinion. They're going to have to play great baseball to end the season above 500. I think they're 500 right now. they have a tough schedule. Like it's, I'm sorry to cut you off, but I think you were heading towards
you're
right. It's laid out in front of them. Every team lost except for the three wild card teams, which obviously they're the ones you want to lose. But every team is losing. They're all losing. They're not very good. And you can make the same argument for the Cubs if you want to, but I feel like they're playing better baseball right now. That we said it last episode. They're entering this series this is the final tough team they play for 19, whatever it is, 18 games. So just play good baseball. If they play kind of like how they played yesterday or Monday, like I think it'll be fine. You don't want that. Like Monday was a little sloppy. The Paredes error. I hate blaming umps, but there were some egregious calls over the past 2 days. That on Tuesday. That off the corner, I don't know how well you can see it from the press box, but he called like six. And listen, the Cubs didn't take advantage of the blown calls that he had on them too. Like I was thinking about that Monday, the Guardians took advantage of a blown strike 3 call.
Yeah.
There were a couple with men on base where the Cubs should have gotten rung up. They didn't take advantage. So the Guardians take advantage. That's how baseball works, right? Ump misses a call, either you take advantage or you don't. But sorry to cut you off, I've just been watching these teams and I'm like, they all stink. Come on.
I think you're spot on with that. I think watching the Cubs, I can't say like, oh wow, this is a very good team either. But Kyle's point was, he's like, I've noticed the tone of these questions that there's this kind of like sense like the season is over or something like that. He's like, we've got a lot of games in front of us, and I understand what he's saying. Like he's right, and he did the whole roller coaster analogy. Like even if your season's going great, there's still going to be dips, and you're going to up and down, and the whole roller coaster metaphor. So he's right in that sense. There is a significant chunk of the season left. It's just that the Cubs have really backed themselves into a corner here, and so breaking down every single game like doesn't make a whole lot of sense to me until just that baseline competency of like winning more games than you lose. I think it's important. Not that you get banners for being above 500, but it's just like, okay, like if you're not one of those bad teams, like you better start to show us now. And I think part of this episode we wanted to get into was like down the stretch here, part of the logic heading into the trade deadline and why the Cubs thought they'd be built for this race was pitching, specifically young pitching, and the depth they had, the talent they had. And I don't know, looking up here in the middle of August, and if you spend any amount of time looking into the future, it's sort of bleak right now. I think, you've followed the pitching side really well. You've seen the progress they've made, the choices they've made, and we can start with Ben Brown, Cade Horton, Jordan Wicks, Hayden Wesneski. You'll pick an injured pitcher. This is not about any one guy. I think it's hard to ever know what a player is physically feeling, right? Like it's not fair to ever question one player. It's just that when you look at the volume of injuries here, it's impossible to not wonder what changes were made, how much can you count on these guys, and kind of the sturdiness of this foundation, which had been going into this year a pitching centric organization.
Yeah, I mean, I think we're seeing yet again why Jed and Theo and Jason McLeod, when they first built this team, didn't lean on pitching as far as development went. Now, granted, they never developed pitching, right? They just didn't do it.
Yeah.
But they didn't succeed in that manner. But it's really hard to develop pitching. There's an old saying, it's called tin stap. There's no such thing as a pitching prospect because they get injured all the time. How many pitchers have the Dodgers developed, this developmental machine? Where are all these pitchers? Gavin Stone, I think, is there.
You're right, yeah.
It's because they all get injured.
Yeah.
It's not because they all stink. They all get injured. River Ryan's getting Tommy John. He comes out there and it looks good and gets Tommy John. I feel like every single time, so we have a Slack channel at work. Every other day, Fabian's in there
Yeah.
talking about another pitcher injury, right?
Yeah.
And I'm not picking on I'm just pointing out the Dodgers. It's all across the league.
Yeah.
But the reality is it's happening to the Cubs too. And they've changed their methods, they're doing new things. And guess what? It can lead to injuries. Now they're not all devastating arm injuries, right? There's one bad arm injury in the org right now, as far as guys that are in the majors or on the cusp, and that's Alzolay, right? About to undergo Tommy John. That's really tough. That's not ideal for them. A guy that had figured things out clearly. I don't think he was healthy all season long. I think I don't know if he felt. I don't think it was torn all season long, but I think he was a little off. He just never seemed himself this season. The Ben Brown thing is just weird to me. I know we've gotten like this. What is a benign neck something? It's like I don't even know exactly what the wording was.
Yeah, I think this week at least we got a degree of clarity, or like a firmer update to where it was like, okay, this is news, and that was that he was shut down. Council made a point of saying don't talk about him in the past tense, but it's also becoming sort of unrealistic to think like, oh, he's going to be a major contributor down the stretch, and I don't know if he will pitch at all again this season. And I think the weird part is if you kind of track the updates, it was maybe scratched or pushed back from a start a while ago, sort of like a neck stiffness thing, and then it was a stress reaction, which sounded really bad,
right?
And then it was framed as this kind of a unique injury that required a lot of, multiple opinions and trying to figure out the best course of action. Then it was diagnosed as a strain, and as sort of a best case diagnosis under these circumstances. And obviously he has not pitched in a long time, he's not been able to push through and have symptom-free experiences throwing. And so again, I think we both have been impressed with Ben Brown's, not just his physical strength and skills, but he's a really thoughtful guy. Like, he was really like a baseball rat or a baseball nerd, just really loved like studying like the finer details of the game and figuring out ways to improve. We saw that him flirting with a no-hitter. So like any of these pitchers we talk about is like a personal attack or questioning, their will to win or whatever Hawk Harrelson used to say. It's just, this is a really complicated, weird situation that has not resolved itself other than the Cubs shutting him down for this moment. And you look at the clock here on August 14th, like, what can he build toward? How much runway is left for this season?
Right. It almost feels like a best case scenario is he comes back as a reliever and helps in like 5 games, down the stretch, like the final 2 weeks, and he gets in 5 games. I think that feels like that would be a huge win for them if he can come back this season and help and get a couple more innings. And I think, put aside like a playoff push here, right? Like put competing aside. Like, for everyone we're talking about right now, it's lost developmental time.
Yeah.
It's lost. It's missed information for Jed and Carter and the rest of the front office to make decisions in the offseason, right? They're losing out on information that they need. Jordan Wicks, I believe, will start tomorrow. So Thursday with Iowa. Is that right?
I think it would.
Is it Friday?
I think he was throwing a bullpen on Tuesday.
Okay, so maybe so Thursday could work. Thursday or Friday.
Yeah, I think that
one
would
of
be
those 2 days.
That would be
The
after his
start.
next outing. He would likely need 2 more outings with Iowa before the Cubs,
which is a little shift. We were told 2, maybe 3 total. Now it's definitely 3, 4, probably 4.
Mm-hmm.
So I don't know if that had to do with he had such a short outing, his first outing, whatever it is. They want him to do more up downs. I think he only went like 1 2/3 or something like that his first game back.
I think it was how long he had gone in between appearances that it just became clear that
Then they
he
just
needs more
decided.
time.
Yeah. I mean, he's back and he's pitching. I think that's the most important thing. He's healthy now. It appears he hasn't had another setback as of yet. He needs to get out there. Like it's imperative. Like he has to get back to this team. And I don't know, like what's going on with Kyle Hendricks as far so I know he's pitching on Friday or Saturday, whatever it may be. Did you get the sense? I know Council isn't going to announce this now.
He's an out-getter. Don't worry about it.
Yeah. Are you getting the sense that when Wicks comes back, he'll take Hendricks' spot, or is Council going to use 6 men to save? Like I just don't know. Like Council keeps that stuff close to the vest, so maybe it's like exactly what you said. I'm just looking to get outs, and we'll deal with that when we get there.
Hendricks was available out of the bullpen, I believe, Monday night, and with the volume of off days in August, it kind of gave them some flexibility. And honestly, when you're talking about still needing 3 more rehab starts, that I don't think this is like a pressing decision, but it does kind of go back to this larger issue of like the Cubs aren't below 500 because their pitching is bad, right? Like their bullpen was not figured out from the jump, and Alzolay is a great example of if he was locked in and healthy, the course of the season probably changes, right? Like looking at Cleveland's closer, Class A, I mean, dude's ERA starts at 0.
Just insane.
Now, like, not saying the Cubs should have signed Josh Hader, but like, I think I saw something on the ticker last night of, I think he blew a save in April and hasn't blown another since. And so, like, if you can lock that down, Cleveland's starting rotation, our buddy Zach Mizell has a really good story up on the Guardians resurgence. Like, they've figured it out. Like, their rotation is not a traditional Cleveland powerhouse, but like their bullpen is just lights out. And the Cubs have done a good job of sort of readjusting on the fly and bringing in, a Tyson Miller and kind of reorganizing and restructuring things. The rotation has been very good overall, but it's just this feeling of like they just needed more things to happen to like take this team to the next level. And, Cade Horton is part of this uncertainty here. He is a number 7 pick in the 22 MLB draft, and he's had a setback. He's likely done for the season. It's a shoulder injury. He has not pitched since the end of May when he had reached AAA Iowa. And I think you were in New York, like when that broke, and we were talking with our editor, like, this is a headline. This is a dude. We have to put a headline on it. And now at this point, maybe he throws some innings in the Arizona Fall League. I would tend to doubt it. And then it's hoping he ramps up for spring training next year. And like that guy has like difference making talent. And, you just see, we're talking about Jordan Wicks, another 1st round pick. And it's like, you're trying to get a sense of the organization's momentum and what like the big picture plan is. When you take these pieces out, Hayden Wisniewski, a guy that was a trade deadline acquisition. Like when you add all these things up, it's just like, this is why it's not their year, right?
Yeah, and it just goes to show how hard it is to develop pitching, how hard it is just to be like, well, I mean, like you can never say like, well, he's coming up, just make a rotation spot for him. Like, never say that. It's like it's just so risky with pitching. Patrick, I don't know if there was any discussion about it. Is surgery like not something that's being considered at all at this point?
With Horton, I had that on my list of questions and had already asked like 3 or 4 different Cade Horton questions in the small group. But the way Carter Hawkins explained it was that did not seem to be on the table right now, that it was more of a. It's funny, right when it came up, like the progressive field PA just started blasting music, and like there's
Of
no one
course.
there,
Yeah.
and like Carter's voice just wasn't. Not that he has like a low, not that he's a low talker, but it just was not like a booming voice given the acoustics at that moment. But no, it just sounded more like he's not starting over. It's just that they pulled him back in his progression, and they there's just not that runway, and they did not think it makes sense to push it right
Yeah.
now. That is, the abundance of caution or whatever they like to say. But so I wouldn't speculate on that. It did not seem like um, something that would require that like immediately, but obviously, like they need to get some like positive indicators here, right? And like that
Yeah.
information you're talking about of what do they have? It's become a bigger question mark than I think they would have projected going into this year.
Yeah, and I mean, we'll do a bigger dive into this once the minor league season is done. I'll start talking to some people, but I don't know if you could say that this was a great minor league season for them, right? There were definitely some good things. A lot of those guys, the position players that got up to AAA, there's some lesser known names as far as the pitchers go. I think it's Birdsell is doing well at AAA. Connor Noland is having a solid season. But these are like guys that you would say, like, if they end up in the big leagues, that's a win. And if they end up like a fifth starter on a winning team, huge success, right? While Cade Horton, Ben Brown, Jordan Wicks, Hayden Wisniewski are all guys that are like, you look at and you'd like to be key contributors on a winning team, if not, linchpins on a winning team, right? Especially,
Sure,
I'd look,
I mean, he's number 7 pick in the draft. Like,
right?
you only have, and then even Wicks, I think he may not have had the ceiling of a Horton, but his profile is like a sturdy, reliable major league starting pitcher who would be on a fast track and who has a lot of aptitude and a lot of interest in kind of game planning and a sophisticated view of, kind of analytics and technology and how to, navigate a lineup, and just taking that off the table for this long, just a huge developmental loss. Like, there's kind of no way around that.
Yeah. So it's a tough year for them as far as pitching development goes. I think it's a big reason why we talked about last episode. Catcher should be number one, expected to be the number one priority for this team as far as upgrading. I don't think they should ignore the rotation. I'm not saying they're going to go out and get Corbin Burns. I think they should look in the Jameson Tyone level of pitcher. I think they should consider that again. It's essentially Shota, Steele, and Tyone locked in, right? And then Assad has had a great season results wise. I get a little worried about the walks and how many innings he can actually throw, and like you just want depth, right? Hendricks is likely gone. Beyond that, it's like what are you looking at? Like who you want some certainty, and we just went over 4 names, and there's no certainty. I don't care how good those guys can be. Like I think Ben Brown impressed me when he was on the mound this year. He was impressive. Hayden Wisniewski, we've seen flashes this is the 3rd season now that we've seen flashes. I don't know if he gives you any stability or certainty. Jordan Wicks, same flashes. I like him. I like his upside. I like what he can be, steady back of the rotation, mid-rotation arm. And we have no clue with Cade Horton, right? Ultimately, we have no clue with any of those guys. I think they should add some certainty. That's an off-season project to look at the names and talk to people and see who they may target. But it has to be something that they consider, because you cannot go into. I just don't think you can go in relying on kids and expect to be a big thing with this team. When we get back to where they are right now, where they were last year, the final win total, they're projected to be around it this year, probably like an 82, 83 win team.
Mm-hmm.
You want to get to be like, you want to feel like your projections have you at 88 to 90.
Yeah.
That's where you want to be. That's where this season, say they're projected to be 83, they've played below that pace. And that's because things don't always go exactly right. And when you're an 83 projected team, you didn't build anything. You didn't build enough certainty or enough, margin for error.
Yes.
So get to 88, get to 90 projection, then 85. If you're under and you're at 85, some bad things happen, bad luck and bad injury luck, whatever it is. 85 can get you into shouting distance, at least for that wild card, right? So and that's the bad season that you have. You don't want, like, it's just you're relying too much on the good things happening right now with this team. So add a good starter, get some depth, and then Ben Brown and Jordan Wicks and all those guys are your depth, right? Moises Ballesteros, Owen Casey, Matt Shaw, your depth. Like, then you don't work. Like, when you have those guys as depth, you feel good about your team. That's how I look at it.
And I mean, are you going to be banking on next year Shota, Jameson, and Steele all having ERAs and kind of the low threes and combining for roughly 80 starts? I mean, we'll see where everything ends up, but I mean, it's been we obviously focused on the negatives here, but there's some fantastic individual performances in the rotation and a lot of resourcefulness in putting the bullpen back together. It just has been one of those seasons where things have not lined up and they have not consistently executed in every phase of the game to a degree that you can consider them a serious playoff contender. And so we'll see. We'll be back on the off day to kind of lay out the rest of this. But, it's been a very interesting sort of week in Cleveland here so far.
Yeah, we'll see if just to make Cubs fans feel a little bit better about this upcoming stretch, that they need to end this road trip with a win, I think, in Cleveland, and just come away with one W there. It's no shame in losing a series to this team, but you just don't want to get swept right now. Too much going on, too little margin for error. So if they come away with the win and then have a good weekend against Toronto, right back to, talking about the playoffs or on the periphery of the playoffs. And like I said, I just don't see these teams ahead of them outside of the playoffs. I just don't see them as like significantly better or even better than the Cubs. They're all kind of bunched together. It's about catching Atlanta or hoping that San Diego or Arizona get cold. I don't see that happening, to be honest. But again, they're on heaters. Can the Cubs get on one of those heaters? That's what we'll be watching for over the next 3-ish weeks. All right. Thanks for listening, everyone. This is Northside Territory. Make sure to rate, review, and subscribe. Subscribe on the YouTube channel and wherever else you get your podcasts. Make sure to read Patrick and my work at The Athletic. Subscribe to that. We'll be covering the Cubs all fall and winter long. So get on board. And thanks for listening, everyone.